Welcome to the Cheating Secrets channel. We hope you enjoy today's story. When the critical part of my story began, I was 30 years old, married to the love of my life, Nancy, who was 32. We had two charming daughters, aged 5 and 6, and we had been married for 8 years. I remember praising myself for the right decisions I made in life. This included who I chose as friends in high school and college, the college I attended, the business I decided to pursue, the company I chose to work for, and most importantly, marrying Nancy. The best decision in my life. I met Nancy in the first semester of my college at a business course, where she was a graduate assistant. She was beautiful, sensual, smart, and funny. I don't know for sure what her first impression of me was, but my first impression of her was, wow. I made sure to excel in all aspects of the course she was a graduate assistant for, and during the lab sessions she led, I made sure to ask only reasonable guiding questions. Towards the end of the semester, I could tell she was interested by the language of her body. On the first day of the second semester, I asked her out on a date. We had a whirlwind romance, and we got married 2 months after I graduated from college. One thing I quickly learned about Nancy was that she was very stubborn and impossible to manipulate or even reason with if she wanted something. This was not a problem for me, although she admitted it was a serious issue with men she had been involved with before we met. However, what was a problem for me was her obvious need to win at everything, but I loved her so much that I learned to cope with it. After college, I quickly landed a job in the marketing department of a Fortune 500 company, and by the time I turned 29, I was a vice president of a Fortune 1500 company. Despite her intelligence, Nancy's foray into the business world was not met with success. She was an excellent teacher, but something was missing when it came to applying what she knew in the real world. However, I believe it was precisely her straightforward personality that was her main shortcoming. So, she returned to academia and at the age of 32 became a professor at a prestigious university approximately 15 kilometers from our home. My married life was remarkable not only because my wife and I had a job we loved, but also because we had wonderful children, with whom it was a joy to interact. We genuinely had loving relationships, and my sexual life was better than I had ever imagined when I was young, with the exception of periods that occurred approximately every 6 months when Nancy and I mysteriously experienced a surge in libido, leading us to behave like cats in heat for about 10 consecutive days. We regularly enjoyed lovemaking, which included experimenting. Nancy was particularly aroused when pregnant, and she required servicing every day, right up to the day she gave birth to each baby. I was a satisfied, content cowboy. At the outset of writing this story, I considered my second best decision ever in my entire story to be hiring Alicia, my secretary, whom I had worked with for 3 years. It could have been a genuinely bad decision because, frankly, Alicia was not really suited for the job when I hired her. I'm not entirely sure what factors motivated me to hire her, but some were related to her tragic past, incredible femininity, strong desire to succeed, as well as the fact that she had to support a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old child, despite being only 23 when I hired her. Alicia turned out to be so intelligent that, if she didn't have the disadvantages I had as a child, she could easily have obtained a doctoral degree in practically any subject she desired. Although her verbal skills were not better than those of her classmates when I hired her, over the course of 18 months, she had no equal among the people I supervised when it came to verbal and interpersonal communication skills. She was also highly organized, worked as diligently as one could expect from a single mother, and became the most reliable person I knew, just to prove to myself that my perception of her was correct. Under the guise of a corporate requirement that all employees must take a certain test, I manipulated her into taking an IQ test. She scored 135, significantly higher than the average college graduate, despite only having completed 10th grade education. My carefree, chubby, figuratively, not literally, as I am 190 centimeters tall with a weight of 88 kilograms, naive existence came to an end 15 days after my 30th birthday. On that Monday morning, I received a call from the school where my 6-year-old daughter was in 1st grade. Because the school was near the university where Nancy worked, she could drop off and pick up the everyday Since Mondays and Wednesdays were her busiest days, I was the primary contact person for the children on those days, so they called me instead of her. If the same thing had happened on a Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday, I might never have found out. My 6-year-old, Elizabeth, simply had some minor stomach issues, but I thought I should take her to the pediatrician's office just in case it was something more serious. I called Nancy to consult with her, but she switched to voicemail. Knowing Nancy's schedule and that she could only have a 10-minute break during the day and where her office was located, I headed to the university as it was on the way to the pediatrician's office, intending to inform Nancy or her secretary. Was Nancy there? That's another story. Imagine my surprise when, approaching the building where her office was located, through the almost concealed side entrance that was never used, I saw Nancy in passionate embrace with another man. I abruptly stopped the car. I looked long enough to see his hands on her buttocks and one of her palms between them at his groin level. I took one photo of them in each other's arms with a high-resolution digital camera. I took a second photo when they broke apart with big smiles on their very noticeable and recognizable faces, then drove my daughter to the doctor's office. I was so shocked that if it had been any other doctor's office besides the pediatrician's, they probably would have assumed that medical assistance was needed for me, not Elizabeth. Fortunately, Elizabeth's problem turned out to be so insignificant that the doctor allowed her to return to school after lunch. Elizabeth and I went to a diner and had lunch together, sharing her favorite sandwich since I didn't have much of an appetite, and then I took her back to school. When I returned to work, I found my voicemail messages from Alicia, then quickly entered my office and closed the door. When Alicia realized I didn't respond to her 3 urgent calls, she knocked on the door and entered. What happened, Blake? You look as pale as a ghost. Was there something serious with Elizabeth's health? She asked. No. I blurted out too quickly. She just had some minor stomach issues, and after lunch, I took her back to school. Then why do you look like a zombie? Alicia asked. You could tell me. You know I'll eventually pry it out of you. Perhaps she was right, but then I wasn't in the mood to talk about it. Nothing serious. Probably just the same minor stomach issues I had, like Elizabeth. Alicia didn't buy it, but she left my office, and I spent the rest of the day behind closed doors. Actually, working is an euphemism because I got damn little done. That evening, I pretended to have stomach trouble like Elizabeth in front of Nancy. After eating half of my dinner and playing with the kids for about an hour, I told Nancy that I was feeling unwell and, just in case what I had was contagious, I would sleep in the guest bedroom. I went to the guest bedroom, but I couldn't just go to sleep. I needed to figure out what to do. Inaction wasn't an option, but a nuclear explosion with the destruction of our family wasn't an option either. I somehow made it through the week without directly confronting the issue. My plan involved doing it on Saturday morning, using my fake illness for another day, a fake business trip for 2 more, which I spent in a local hotel, and a night at Nancy's parents' house. In principle, it worked, though Nancy had a very suspicious look on her face, especially when I didn't go to bed on Friday night for what she clearly hoped would be an intense sex session. I said I needed to work on the computer for about an hour. What happened, Blake? Nancy asked, dressed in her most alluring negligee, as I sat behind the laptop in the office. Giving her just one glance, I replied, we'll talk about it tomorrow morning, and then I'll take the kids to the zoo so you'll have some time to think. Why can't we talk about it now? Because, damn it, I don't want to talk about it now, that's why. So just fuck off to bed. It was the first time I had ever spoken to her like that in all our years together. The last time I looked at her, she had wide open eyes, but soon she left. I slept in the guest room again. Nancy looked like crap the next morning. In accordance with the arrangements I made 2 days earlier, I sent the kids to play with the teenage girl who often watches over them, promising to head to the zoo within half an hour. As soon as the kids went out the door, Nancy began. How could you talk to me like that last night? That's all she managed to say before I yelled, shut up, Nancy. Our conversation will consist of me talking and you listening. This got her attention, and she leaned back in the kitchen chair. I don't know how long you've been having an affair, why, or what his name is, but frankly, it really pisses me off. I continued. Nancy opened her mouth, as if she were about to deny it, but I slammed my palm on the kitchen table, and she thought better of it. That's what will happen if you want to stay married. If I ever get any indication that any of our friends or family know about it, I will file the papers. The next day, same if you ever bring him or them into this house. She flinched at the word, they. Until I have proof that the affair or affairs are over, you show me a health certificate from the STD testing lab and tell me how I can regain trust in you. I will sleep in the guest bedroom. When I come back with the kids today, if you haven't told me you're filing for divorce, immediately, I intend for our family life to continue as it was before Monday, but we won't be having sex until my 3 conditions are met. With those words, I grabbed the car keys and left. Luckily, it's hard to wallow in depression with young kids around, especially when they're having such a great time at the zoo, so I almost forgot about our situation until returning late. That same day, Nancy wasn't home when we arrived. She came back about an hour later, just as I was finishing up cooking spaghetti, meatballs, and salad to the best of my culinary abilities. She was dressed not in her usual Saturday mom attire, but in a form-fitting dress and heels. After Nancy changed, we had a fairly typical family dinner. After I washed the dishes post-dinner, we played a standard Saturday night family game, watched a children's DVD until one fell asleep, and the other could barely keep their eyes open, and each of us prepared a child for bed and tucked them in. Once the kids were safely tucked in, I changed into my biking gear and set off on a 1-hour night bike ride. When I got back home, Nancy was watching a movie in the living room. She paused the movie, came into the kitchen where I was chugging a liter of iced tea, and said, "We need to talk some more." "No, we don't," I said nonchalantly. Then I went upstairs, took a shower, and went to bed in the guest room. I made sure to lock the door. I heard a knock on it, but tried to ignore it. When it persisted, I turned on the air purifier to drown out the background noise. We had essentially a typical Sunday. I even held Nancy's hand as we walked to church. That day, we went with the kids to a family barbecue with friends, and if anyone there could tell that Nancy and I had issues, they certainly didn't show it. However, I subtly questioned a number of my friends and family members, just to see if there was any chance they knew anything about Nancy's affair. Either my inquiries were too subtle, or no one had the slightest clue. Nancy approached me a few times during the barbecue and hugged me. I always responded with a smile on my face. Nancy made another attempt to continue the conversation on Sunday evening, but I responded to it with another night bike ride, and then, after showering, immediately went to bed in the guest room. Many people may wonder why I chose the approach I took with Nancy. There were many reasons for this. 2 main ones were that the thought of not being with my kids every day saddened me greatly, and considering how stubborn Nancy was, she could easily push my buttons. We would have had a confrontation from which neither of us would have recovered, and the marriage would have collapsed. I thought that over time the marriage could be saved, but only if I took a firm stand while avoiding a nuclear meltdown. I truly believe that over the next 3 weeks, everyone we knew was fooled into thinking that Nancy and I had the same relationship as before that fateful day, except for Alicia. Alicia had something like a sixth sense, radar, intuition, or something like that, because she wasn't fooled. For a single day, one of the procedures I initiated when I became the vice president of marketing was to cut work in half on Fridays every 2 weeks during the summer. It had such a beneficial effect on morale that during those 34.5 hours that people in my department worked over those weeks, I achieved higher productivity than during a regular 40-hour work week. On a Friday, about 3 weeks after the incident, everyone else had left except Alicia when she entered my office around 1:30. "Come clean, Blake. I'm not leaving until you do," she said, plopping down in the chair across from my desk. At first, I tried to feed her excuses, but she wasn't buying any of it. "I know you need to wrap up a contract with Jenkins before you leave here today. This is a very comfortable chair, and I won't leave or let you do any work on the Jenkins contract until you come clean about everything." Her crossed arms and legs and her intense, cobra-like stare left no doubt that she intended to do what she said. So, I told her everything. "How long is this going to go on?" she asked. "I have no idea," I honestly replied. "So, it's been over 3 weeks without sex for you?" Stay tuned and subscribe to the channel to get the rest of the story.